Hi, I'm Bybreen Samuels and welcome back. On September the 18th, Saturn moves into Sagittarius and will remain in that fire sign until December the 19th, 2017. So for the next 2.25 years, we're going to feel the impact of this Saturnian energy. So Saturn, wherever it shows up in your chart, but also in the skies, Saturn is about being the teacher in our lives in one form or another. And so there's a focus towards us becoming more disciplined, more focused, structured, giving consideration to how we take a concept and bring it into everyday reality. And that essentially is what these two aspects are talking about. Saturn, being an earth sign because it rules Capricorn, moves into the fire sign of Sagittarius, which is about being the philosopher. So we have the teacher as one concept and then the philosopher as the other. And the reason being is because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And so it's a fantastic time for you to take that big blue sky thinking that you've been cultivating for quite some time and think of that big dream that you want to realize. And Saturn in Sagittarius is an invitation, a powerful invitation for you to now ground that concept. And Saturn being in this sign is really about testing your meaning of faith in the world. What does it mean to you, the concept of faith? Do you actually believe in that big blue sky idea enough to run with it? And so over this 2.25 year period, what's happening in the skies is that Saturn is forming a T-square to Jupiter and also to Neptune. And so that means that there's a connection between Jupiter and Neptune, and both of them are connecting to Saturn. And so Saturn in this configuration is a very pivotal place within the universe, but also within your chart. So it's a very powerful placement, and it has a relationship to both of these planets. And so with regards to Saturn square Jupiter, here we have the idea of this great concept that you have. It's now time to roll up your sleeves, to do the dedicated hard work to realize it. And so what Saturn is doing is testing you. It's testing the foundations of what and how you are building your life. And so where you have a square, which means it's a challenge, you're going to experience it as a challenge, you may around that concept feel pessimistic because that's very Saturnian, or very optimistic, which is very Jupiterian. So you might oscillate between, well, I've got this great idea, but I don't know. Therefore, their doubt creeps in and you're losing confidence. So what you could be seen to be doing is curtailing, limiting, and concealing your idea. Then conversely, the very same idea, you might think, this is a fantastic idea. I'm going to run with it. I know it's a risk, but I'm prepared to do the diligent, hard work in order to realize this goal. And so the opportunity now is for you to choose between these two. Also, Jupiter supports what's happening to Saturn because Jupiter is in Virgo, which is an earth sign, but actually it's in a weaker position because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And so in this situation, Jupiter is opposite Neptune, which is in Pisces, where it will be exalted. So here it's in a weaker position. So whatever Jupiter comes into contact with, it supports the concepts. So with regards to Jupiter in Virgo, Virgo is about craftsmanship, precision, doing things properly and focusing. That supports what's happening over here in Saturn, which is about structure, form, control, and limitations. And so what Jupiter is doing is supporting the idea that actually, if you want to achieve this great opportunity, you're going to have to get your head down and work hard for it. Also, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and so it's about taking that big philosophical idea and grounding it into everyday reality. Furthermore, you've got Saturn, who is the natural ruler of the 10th house. So let's say, for example, we have Saturn in the first house here, Jupiter in the 10th house, and then Neptune in the 4th house. So the natural configuration from an astrological chart is that Saturn is the natural ruler of the 10th house. And so the 10th house is about your standing in the world, your contribution to public service. It's about your career. It's about your vocation. It's about your profession. And so therefore, this next 2 years is a great time for you to take that idea, concretize it, develop the expertise so that therefore you can begin to share it with the world, so it elevates your position. So it's a great time, if you have an idea that you're really serious about, that you could cultivate it so you become an expert in that particular field. So that's one aspect of the T-square. So that's Saturn square Jupiter. The other aspect of the T-square is Saturn square Neptune. So here, again, we have the teacher, but this time the teacher meets the idealist. So in this situation, we have Neptune, which is about dissolving boundaries. It's about challenging authority. It's about loss of control. And the theme when you're dealing with Saturn and Neptune is about sacrifice. So there's very much this feeling that something has to be or something has been sacrificed. So a great question that you could ask yourself during this particular transit is, what is it that I need to let go of in order to bring about that ideal goal? So on a personal level, there's some type of sacrifice that needs to take place. You may be somebody who's been full of responsibility and you've carried the burdens of responsibility, and now that Saturn is square in Neptune, you might feel like you want to escape from that responsibility. Or another way to think about it is that you're somebody who's been so dutiful that you recognize that you sacrifice something very profound in your world in order to carry out those responsibilities. And now that you've got the square, you're being challenged to either continue with those responsibilities and remain unhappy if that's how you feel, or become far more courageous to recognize that you've sacrificed a part of yourself and you choose no longer to do so. So that's on a personal level, but also we're beginning to see how Saturn and Neptune are showing themselves in the socio-political world. So we're experiencing these really harrowing photographs of children and adults, and particularly this young Syrian toddler who drowned and was washed up onto the beaches in Turkey. And so what we have here is a real play between the structure of authority, i.e. European governments, who've been very defensive and referring to refugees as if they're swarming their countries and, you know, they don't want them to break through their barriers, which is a very Saturnian way. It's a very Saturnian principle about thinking about being boundaried, being controlled. And then there's the uprising from Neptune, which is about very much a humanitarian approach, that refugees are human beings just like everybody else, and there's no distinction between, you might be sitting behind the government positions, but actually we're dealing with human beings, and we are not prepared to tolerate the dehumanization of refugees and migrants who are trying to uplift their lives. And so what we're seeing here is, and what we will see more of is there going to be a very boundaried and structured approach to dealing with immigration, or are we going to take a far more humanitarian approach to it? And just over the last 24 to 48 hours, Germany has made some very positive moves, and also the UK is now giving reconsideration around how refugees and migrants are going to be handled. And so it's a great time for us as the collective. It's about raising the consciousness about what's happening around our world and what's happening to each other as people, and directly challenging governments in terms of rethinking their policies, their legislations, as well as practices. So it'll be interesting to see over the next 2.25 years what types of approaches are going to be taken by European and other governments around the world dealing with who we are, each other as human beings. So that gives you a flavour of what this configuration is about. So just in summary, we have Saturn square Jupiter, and so here Saturn is testing your meaning of faith. Do you truly believe in that wonderful blue sky concept that you have, or are you querying and questioning and now being doubtful over whether you think that concept will work or not? And then we have the question that you can consider is around, what do I need to let go of in order to transform and bring about this ideal goal? So on that note, I'll leave you till next time.